I called my mom. Mom, I have a big favor to ask of you. Would it be possible for you to keep Tina until tomorrow evening? Sure, sweetheart. We'd love to have her spend the night. Don't worry about a thing. We'll take good care of her. Thanks, Mom. I owe you one. Just have fun, she tittered. Fun is not what I was having right now. I called and ordered a pizza and forced Nadine to eat 2 slices. She was getting better, but there was no way I was going to let her drive home. It didn't matter that she didn't have anything with her. She was going nowhere. I showed her where my bathroom and shower were, gave her a pair of sweats and one of my t-shirts, and closed the door behind me. It took a few minutes before I heard the shower start, which was a good sign. 15 minutes later she was done, and it was my turn. I gingerly removed what was left of my clothes and threw them on the bathroom floor. I'd probably end up tossing them out, besides the new wear marks from the street. I was sure the bloodstains would never come out. I had wrapped cellophane on my knee and elbow to keep the gauze bandages dry, knowing I would have to hit Walgreens for replacements tomorrow morning. All I had were a few small adhesive bandages. Sadly, I would need a lot more than that. Looking at my naked body, I saw I was a mess. Scrapes and welts were visible. No bruises yet except for the ones on my right hip and shoulder. I knew they'd be bad because I could already feel the heat radiating from them. Others would probably pop up later, but like most of my other injuries, I would be able to hide them from everyone, especially my family. Even areas that weren't rubbed raw stung when the water hit them. I did all I could not to scream out in pain. I guess I wasn't a tough, hardcore biker after all. I carefully washed what I could before the sting of the soap, mixed with the warm water. Gotta be too much for me to endure. Instead of wiping my body, I just patted it down to remove what excess water I could. By the time I was done, I knew that towel would join ranks with my clothes and eventually be trashed. It too was spotted with blood. I was hurting, but also saying a little prayer under my breath, thanking God. It could have been a lot worse. Shorts, a sleeveless shirt, and sandals were all I could manage to get on. My left arm was fine, but with the bandages on my right elbow and shoulder, dressing myself was going to be a bit of a challenge. Like I said, I was hurting, though after popping another pain pill I knew relief was not long in coming. When I was done in the bathroom, I went looking for Nadine. After calling out her name twice without getting an answer, I got worried. Damn, I hope she didn't try to ride home. Then I realized I still had her keys. After looking around the outside, I went back upstairs. I knew where she was. Grabbing 2 sodas from the fridge, the pain pills making wine not an option, I headed for the roof. Struggling up the stairs, it didn't take me long to realize I was going to be one sore mother tomorrow. When I hit the top step and saw the open door, I knew I was right. Nadine was sitting in one of the loungers staring out at the dark beach. The sun had set hours ago. The ocean breeze felt good on my face. She turned around, smiled, and I handed her one of the sodas before sitting down next to her with a thud. My body was moving like a crippled old man's. It was quiet, dark, and almost peaceful as we sat there together in silence. "I thought you were dead," were the raspy words that came out of her mouth. Although it was dark, I could see the tears starting again. I grabbed her hand and kissed it. She drew in a sob. I couldn't move. "You were hit and thrown over the top of that car before I could even stop. You were just lying there, motionless, and all my body would let me do was stand there and look at you. My legs wouldn't move, and my heart had already exploded through my chest. Everything came rushing back into my brain. Not again. People were screaming, flocking around you, and I was totally useless. I am so sorry. When I heard someone say not to move you, I knew you weren't dead, but I was afraid to look. I don't even remember walking over to you or anything else that was happening around me. I just saw that you were alive and prayed that my mind wasn't playing some stupid trick on me like last time. I wanted to scream, shout, laugh, or something. Nothing came out. You were talking, except I heard nothing. I'm still not sure what exactly happened. All I knew was that you were alive, and I hadn't lost you too." I reached over, wiped the tears that were running down her cheeks, and gave her a soft kiss. "I'm fine. A little banged up maybe, but fine, nevertheless. I'm just glad I was wearing a helmet and heavy gloves, or it might have been a lot worse. Steve, you have no idea how worse it could have been." She was now talking louder. "You could have died. How could I have explained that to Tina? She would have lost both her parents, and it would have been my fault. Your fault? Nadine, I don't understand. I was there and did nothing, just like last time. I stood there and did nothing. Greg died and I did nothing. And now you. Listen to me, I said, putting her face between my hands and turning it towards me. There was nothing you could have done to prevent what happened. That kid was in too big a hurry and did something really stupid. I'm just glad I was far enough ahead of you, or you would have been hit also. I kissed her again with a lot more feeling behind it this time. We're both fine, and in a couple of weeks this will just be another bad memory to try and forget. This time she kissed me back. It was sometime after midnight before we found our way down from the roof and back into my place. I debated, walking down the stairs, where we were both going to sleep, but she made that decision for me. I gave her a new toothbrush I'd gotten from my dentist a month ago, and after we'd both done what we had to, she was the one who led me to my bed. No, we didn't do it, and truth be known, I don't know if I even could have. Between the drugs and being as sore as I was, I may have been able to, but it wouldn't have been that memorable. What we did was kiss more than a little, then fall asleep in each other's arms. The pain woke me out of a sound sleep just after 9. I untangled myself from Nadine, that feat taking about 10 minutes. I dragged myself out of bed and into the bathroom. I took 2 more pain pills and washed them down with a tall glass of water. A little swish of mouthwash, and I was easing my sorry back into my bed next to Nadine. Curious, that's what I was. She had on my t-shirt and some type of panties, but that was it. The sweatpants were off, and I thought about lifting the covers to look at her leg, but decided against it. No use pissing her off at this point. If she wanted me to see, then she would show me. The next thing I knew, I was asleep again. I was slowly coming out of a semi-drug-induced sleep when through the slits of my eyes I saw a familiar sight. It wasn't Tina looking at me this time. It was Nadine. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Sore, but alive." She smiled. "You sleep okay last night?" I inquired, rubbing my leg up against hers. "You snore, do you know that?" she informed me, pushing me gently. "I don't snore, never have. Believe me, you snore. I'm surprised your wife never said anything about it. Maybe it's the pain pills I took last night?" "Yeah, right, tell me another." I was going to tickle her, or at least grab her, but with everything that had happened yesterday, I backed off a bit and just leaned over and kissed her. It was soft, pleasant, and just long enough to give me the start of a hard-on. "I'll be right back," she announced, throwing her legs over the side of the bed, heading for the bathroom. The toilet flushed, and I heard the sink and my bottle of mouthwash being used. I didn't stare at her, but I saw them, and Tina was right. They weren't small. Now, where were we? The next half hour was filled with a lot of kissing. Our hands explored each other, but neither one of us made any dramatic moves. When I put one of my legs between hers, I could feel the heat. Did she want me as much as I wanted her? What the hell was I so afraid of? If she didn't want to go any further, she'd tell me, wouldn't she? No more bullshit. I was going for it. After a bit of fumbling around, I caressed her jugs, and when she didn't stop me, I kept on going down past her stomach to where my leg had been for the last 10 minutes. I was careful to avoid touching her right leg, knowing she was self-conscious about the scars. With both of us breathing hard, our kissing became more passionate as she tried to touch my tonsils with her tongue while I continued to bring her to new heights. I heard it start at her toes and finally come out her mouth when she pulled her lips off mine. She didn't scream, swear, or much of anything else other than to hold my hand down on her until she climaxed. Damn, it went on for a long time, but I just kept going until she finally started to come down. Afterwards, she took my hand and wrapped my arm around her, nuzzling her head into the nape of my neck. I heard and felt her hot breath on my chest, but was unsure what was coming next. I know she liked what I did. She had to. She climaxed. For Christ's sakes. Then I started second-guessing what I'd done. We weren't going to be going any further because I didn't have a condom to my name, but I was still sprouting a huge hard-on and hoped for a little relief. "I'm not on the pill," she whispered in an almost apologetic voice, "and I haven't done this since my husband died." I didn't have a clue where this conversation was going. "If you want, I'll do my best, but I just don't want you to be disappointed." I don't know what she was worried about. Less than 1 minute later, I was coating the ceiling of my bedroom as we both laughed at what I'd done. Been a while, has it? At this point, what was I going to do? Lie? You could say that. She was already up, and after hearing the sink run for only a short time, Nadine brought back a warm wet washcloth. After a few swipes to remove what was still left, I cleaned up my chest and the pillow next to my head. When I was finished, I tossed it from my bed onto the bathroom floor. Just like a guy, she said, watching me. I kissed her and started rolling around on the bed with her. A big mistake. When I rolled over onto my right shoulder, ouch, I about shrieked, rolling back onto my left side. You okay? Not totally, but I think we should save the acrobatics for a couple of weeks. One more good kiss and I rested on my left elbow looking at her. You want to talk before or after breakfast? After, if you don't mind. For some reason, I don't remember eating any dinner last night, and this girl doesn't think well on an empty stomach. I would have loved to shower with her, but she had other ideas. Being right-handed, shaving was going to be a real chore, and I nixed the idea of possibly trying to grow a beard. It didn't go over very well the last time. I was waiting for her when she walked out of my shower. This was the first time I'd seen her totally naked, and I wasn't disappointed. Nadine had a tight body, and though she didn't have big jugs, what she had was more than enough for me. I saw the other scars that were scattered across her body, but they were nothing compared to the 2 long ones on the side of her right leg. They were pink, about 1/4 of an inch wide, and probably a little bit over a foot long each. It looked like there had probably been extensive work done on her right leg and knee, and you could still see the marks where the sutures had been. The upper part of her leg appeared to be in worse shape than the lower part. I took her wet body into my arms and kissed her. To me, she was beautiful. Her big brown eyes told me she was grateful for my silent acceptance of her appearance. Later, food first, was all she said, pushing me towards the shower while wrapping her long back hair in a towel. This morning's shower wasn't any easier than the one from last night. I skipped the plastic wrap this time, figuring no matter what I did, the bandages were going to get wet. I still hurt even with the pain pills, knowing I probably would for the next week or so. No motorcycles this morning. We took my car, passing on Denny's because it was packed to overflowing. I found a small diner a couple of miles down the beach that was about 3/4 full. The coffee was good, but the bacon and buttermilk hotcakes were to die for. I cried uncle after 5 pancakes, 2 eggs, and 4 strips of bacon. Nadine didn't even come close to eating what I'd consumed. I was washing down my meal with a cup of coffee when she started. Okay then, where do we go from here? Nadine asked. She reached across the table for my hands. How about back to my place? The look she gave me wasn't priceless. Seriously, where do we go from here? Well, since I can assume we are now officially girlfriend-boyfriend, we can talk about what each of us is looking for and what turns on or off the other. But we do have another issue. She's short, has light brown hair, and can be a royal pain in the butt when she wants to be, along with being a real know-it-all, especially when it comes to the 2 of us. Did you know she told me we have been a couple for quite a few months already, only we didn't know it? Steve, I think you know how I feel about Tina, but there's another big issue we need to address, except I don't want to discuss it here. No problem, I'm done. If I drink any more coffee, I'm going to float out of here. Let's go back to my place and talk. Tommy will probably be bringing Tina back with him after having lunch at Mom's, so we've got at the most 2 hours. We held hands all the way back to my place, not saying much. Once inside, Nadine gave me a big kiss, and we sat down on the couch in the living room. Steve, I don't know an easy way to say it, so I'm just going to tell you. I mostly likely will never be able to have kids. She waited for my response. Did you hear what I said? I may not be able to have any kids. The doctor said because of the accident, I would have a hard time ever conceiving. They mentioned in vitro fertilization if I ever wanted to try to get pregnant, but it just seems so sterile to me. Besides, since Greg died, there hasn't been anyone I have even considered marrying and having kids with. So if you're looking for a boatload of kids, sorry, I'm not your girl. At that point, she shut up. Nadine, I'm not looking for a boatload of kids. One more might be nice, but it is absolutely not a deal breaker for me. I've already got Tina, and if you can't, we could always adopt if we wanted another one. Also, because of my leg, skiing is out, as is hiking for any distance. I can dance, but there is a lot I can't do. My leg will never be what it once was." She hung her head down, and in the next sentence pronounced, "And isn't the most beautiful thing to look at either." She was laying it all out there for me, almost like she was waiting for me to say this or that was a deal breaker. None so far were. I also keep in contact with Greg's parents and probably always will. I'm their only link to their dead son. She was tearing up again. "Nadine, I still see and talk to Lana's parents, and Tina has a great relationship with them. I would never come between you and them. I just am not that kind of guy. As far as skiing, hiking, dancing, so what? That stuff hardly means shit to me. It's you I'm looking forward to getting to know a lot better. I know a little about you, but I want to know a lot more. Hell, Tina probably knows way more about you than I do. You're right. We've even had some pretty intimate conversations about you. She understands you a lot better than I think you realize. But the one thing I found out immediately was that you're her whole world right now. I don't think she could be any closer to you if she tried. I thought I knew that, but it was nice hearing it from someone else. Well, Tina thinks the world of you and has chastised me on more than occasion for not making a move on you. And why didn't you? I guess I just wasn't ready to move on yet. Lana wasn't just my wife. She was also my life. We were best friends and shared everything. When she got sick, we both fought it, and when she died, I felt like a huge part of me died right along with her. My wanting to know you better gave me the strength to make the decision to move on with my life. Lana is still in my heart, but I want more than what her memories can give me now. I want a real person, someone I can touch, taste, and love. I want my life back. I want what every other guy wants, someone to love and live out my life with. For a while, you seemed to want to be only friends. I wasn't even sure you were approachable or would even want me. But here we are, and I am ready to take the next step with you. We talked on and off for the next hour. There were things we disagreed on, but most were insignificant items. We knew we weren't clones of each other, nor did we want to be. "Oh my God," I said, looking at my watch. "Tommy is going to be here soon. I need to get dressed." "Steve, you are dressed?" "No, I need to put on long pants and a long sleeve shirt. I don't want my parents, especially my dad, to find out about the accident." "Steve, you're not a little kid." "Nadine, you don't know my dad." Tommy asked where my bike was, and all I said was I was having some work done on it. Tina gave me a hug and then kept her eyes on Nadine, I guess looking to see any change in the way we were acting towards one another. When Tommy and his group left, Tina sat down in one of the kitchen chairs and looked directly at me. "Okay, what happened and where's your bike? Don't even try to tell me it's being worked on. That girl was too smart for a soon-to-be 10-year-old. It just needed a little work done to the front end, that's all." "On Sunday?" "Dad, you're not talking to Uncle Tommy. Tell her, Steve," Nadine said, moving closer to us. "Okay, but don't worry, it was nothing. I had a little accident yesterday." Before I could get anything else out, I was peppered with a million questions, most of which dealt with how I was. "I'm fine, just a couple of scrapes and bruises." Against my wishes, Nadine told Tina the whole story of yesterday, hospital visit and all. Tina listened, and then focused in on only one thing Nadine said. "Wait a minute. Nadine, you spent the night?" Nadine looked over at me. "I did, but we slept in separate beds." "Nadine, I'm not a kid anymore." She was now smiling ear to ear. "So does this mean you two are officially a couple?" For the second time, Nadine looked at me for guidance. "I guess we are," she told Tina. "Way to go, girl," Tina said, giving Nadine a high five. "Wait until I tell Grandma. She's been so worried that Dad would never find someone again. Now at least she won't have to worry about him anymore. That will be our job." Tina and Nadine went on and on about everything for the next hour or so. Nadine stayed for several more hours, ate dinner with us, before announcing her departure. I hate to spoil this wonderful evening, but I've got to get home. I've got work tomorrow, and it's been kind of a stressful couple of days. The kiss she gave was just like the ones we'd shared last night in bed. "I'll walk you out," I told her. She gave Tina a hug and kissed goodbye. I walked her out to her bike, kissed her again, and told her to go slow and be careful. "Call me when you get home, okay?" "Don't worry, I will. There is no way I want to lose what I just found." I spent the next hour answering Tina's questions about how I really was feeling, which became a mute issue when I asked her to help me change my dressings. My knee hurt, but that was the least of my concerns. My entire shoulder had now turned an ugly purple, greenish-black, and was throbbing. It was time for another pill. I put a few old towels on the bed, so the blood seeping through the gauze pads would not ruin my good sheets. I was in bed when Nadine called. "Miss me? You know I do. Why don't you come back and we can, talk?" "So that's what you call it now? How are we going to get to know each other without, talking to one another?" "Steve, one thing we didn't talk about, but I think it goes without saying, we're exclusive, right? No others?" "Nadine," I said in soft voice. "Well, you don't know unless you ask. After this weekend, I just had to be sure. We've probably been exclusive for the last 6 months? And like I said, according to Tina, everyone knew that except us." She laughed. "I guess you're right. What are you going to do about your beautiful bike?" "I'll call Allstate tomorrow, send them the accident report, and tell them where they can find the bike. I never did get a good look at it after the accident. Just how bad is it?" "Steve, let's just say that maybe you should start looking for another bike." "That bad?" "What I saw of it wasn't good. The front end was totally ripped off. The entire left side was down to the bare metal, and the rear tire and fender were mangled. As I said, maybe it's time to look for another bike. You do have good insurance, don't you?" "I do, but if they total my bike, it's going to cost me an arm and a leg when I renew my insurance policy again." "It wasn't your fault." "Doesn't matter. An accident is an accident no matter who's at fault. I'll still be a future risk. It's not fair, but what in life is? Love. It's something that demands nothing, expects little, but wants only the same in return." We were both quiet after that. "Call me tomorrow, will you?" I could hear the emotion in her voice. "You know I will." Sleep came easy. Probably was the 2 pain pills I took. I'm just glad I set my radio alarm and my phone alarm because I barely heard either of them when they went off. I almost skipped my shower. I was already tired of hurting. Tina barely got off to school on time. The next few days were busy, to say the least. I filled my days with doctor's appointments, meetings with the insurance adjuster, and trying to hide my injuries from my boss and family. Nothing stays hidden forever. Somehow my dad found out. Even though he said nothing, after talking to him the following weekend, I just knew he knew. It wasn't like I was a kid anymore and needed his acceptance or blessings. It's just that I didn't want to worry him or my mom. Without a bike to ride Nadine and I spent a lot of time talking in and out of bed the following weekend. When Tommy invited us over to his house in town on Saturday evening, I just casually mentioned I would be bringing Nadine with me. "I thought the two of you weren't dating?" Things have kind of changed. Everyone liked Nadine. When all the women headed to the kitchen, I knew I was in trouble. Nothing good ever comes out of it when the women get together and talk, especially in private. They trade stories, compare notes, and my daughter, sister-in-law, and mother would have a lot to tell her about me. I just hoped they wouldn't scare Nadine off. We were the center of attention, fresh meat for discussion, as they say. On the way out, when I kissed my mom goodnight, she whispered, "Don't blow it," in my ear. I knew all I needed to know about Nadine. My dad shook my hand and told me he hoped I felt better real soon. Like I said before, he was just letting me know he knew. Parents always seem to find out, don't they? No matter how old you are? "That was fun," Nadine said on the way back to my place, watching me drive. "Do you think it's fair that you now know all my dirty little secrets, and I don't know hardly anything about you?" "Ask away. I'll tell you anything you want to know. Maybe later. Right now, I just want to get out of these pants and put on a pair of shorts." I wondered if Nadine would ever feel comfortable enough around me to wear anything but long pants, the only thing I have seen her in so far. Nothing had been said about later that night. Was she expecting an invite to spend the night? We weren't high school kids any longer, and weren't going to get in trouble for a sleepover, but it was so new. I didn't want to have her think I expected it. I also had Tina to consider. "What's the matter?" she asked, walking into my place. I hemmed and hawed a bit before finally asking her what she was doing later. "Oh goody, I thought you'd never ask. Can I spend the night? I'll have to call my mom, but I know she'll say yes." Then she gave me that all-knowing look. "Steve, I'm not a mind reader. If you want something, all you have to do is ask." I didn't say it with words, more so with lips and arms. This time I wanted to know and feel all of her. I gently moved my hand to her right leg, feeling all there was to feel. When I felt her try to move my hand away from her leg, I whispered, "No, don't. I want to know all of you. I think you are perfect exactly as you are." With that said, the passion exploded from both of us. An hour later, I lay there next to her, hoping that Tina had not heard us. Nadine did her best to muffle her pleasure, but I think even the neighbors may have heard her delight in what we were doing. I was just thankful I'd picked up a 12-pack of condoms earlier in the week. I still wasn't as mobile as I would have liked, and it hurt like hell to put any weight on my knees, but we improvised and our first time was memorable. "How come you used a condom?" Nadine asked. "What, are you afraid of catching something?" "I just don't think you getting pregnant right now is a good idea." "Steve, weren't you listening to me last time? It's going to take an act of God to get me pregnant." "Look, my dad got my mom pregnant when they thought she was past being able to get pregnant. Hell, my brother got Ruth pregnant, I think, by just walking past her in the hallway. The men in my family are baby makers, cut and dry, and I don't think you want a little one right now. Do you?" "See, that's what I mean. You start making a judgment call without bothering to talk to me about it." She tried to look angry. "You want a baby?" "Didn't say that either. We need to talk about everything that concerns the three of us." She was right about that one. I wouldn't make that mistake again. I looked at the clock and saw we had enough time to get in one more session. For a brief second, I thought about Lana. The afterglow and subsequent kissing after my lovemaking with Nadine reminded me of all the great times I'd had with her. I felt a pang of guilt. "A penny for your thoughts," Nadine said, smiling at me and then licking my lips before giving me one of the greatest kisses I've ever experienced. She sighed. "You sure do know what buttons to push. I'll have to give you that." "Nadine, I don't want you to get mad, but I've got a personal question I want to ask you." "Shoot. After what we just did, there can't be too many personal things left between us. Please, don't take this wrong. I was worried about continuing. When you're with me, do you ever, think about Greg? Cheating on me already in your mind with your dead wife? Are you?" She was looking stern, staring at me, and I immediately, though I'd really blown it this time. "Relax. I'm just surprised I didn't yell out Greg's name when I climaxed that last time." "Then you're not angry?" "Steve, we've both got a past that includes two of the most fantastic people who ever walked this earth. They were taken from us, or we'd still be with them. I think about Greg every day, and I know he'd want me to be happy. I'm guessing the same goes for you and Lana. I'm just happy we have this chance to maybe get back a little of what we each had with them. But mister, I catch you thinking about that blonde 304 Rita, the one who comes to the HOG rallies, and you and I are going to have words." With that said, all was well in the world again. It was Thursday afternoon before my insurance agent got back to me. "Steve, we sent your bike over to Daytona Beach Harley-Davidson to have them give us an independent estimate. Our adjuster had already given us his figure, but we just needed a second one." "Well, what's the damage?" "You're not going to like it, but we've decided to total the bike. It would cost more to fix it than what the bike is worth." I was ready for that. What I didn't expect was the payout figure he gave me. "Don, that's more than a couple of $1,000s less than it's worth. The bike doesn't even have 5,000 miles on it, and it cost over $32,000 to build. But Steve, you didn't pay $32 for it. Doesn't make any difference, we're talking worth here. Look, the bike is worth at least 30. I paid 25 plus, and you're offering me 22. If I get an attorney and decide to fight it, you're going to spend more than 4 before it's all said and done. Let's split the difference. Give me 23 and a half, and we'll call it even. I'm going to buy another bike, and you'll get that policy." He was still a little quiet. "Look, I'll even give you a shot at my beach house. If your price looks good, you'll get the house, which will more than make up for anything on the bike. Do we have a deal?" I knew he had a lot more latitude than he was letting on. I was in the business, just not dealing with personal property. I'd insured the bike for $27 because I knew if I needed to repair something it would be expensive. He agreed. We now started talking about the beach house. It was a good deal for him since insurance was high on any property near the ocean, even one a block in. I had the check in my hand 3 days later and set out with my 2 girls to look at what was out there. "You've got to buy a Harley. The only question is how much do you want to pay? Nadine explained, walking into the dealership with Tina and me. I was thinking used, one maybe 2 years old. Everyone warned not to go too small because I'd eventually regret it. I was told I would soon want to upgrade to a larger, more expensive bike, and I'd lose my bum on the trade. After talking to the Harley dealership salesman, he made his suggestion. The smallest bike I would recommend for you would be a Road King. It's got the windshield, side bags for storage, and is comfortable for 2-up riding. I looked over at Tina. She didn't look all that happy about what I was looking at. Dad, how about that one? She said, walking over to a crimson red one that had a full fairing. It's got a trunk and a nice backrest. I could ride forever on the back of this one. Nadine added in her 2 cents worth. Steve, you might find the radio a nice option on your trips to and from work every day, not to mention that Tina could plug in her iPod on our runs. There were a million different models and the same number of options available. I think the only way to figure this out is to try them all. And that's what we did. We test rode all the available models from a Road King up the Screaming Eagle Ultra. Most were new except the Screaming Eagle, which was usually a specialty order. It, however, topped everything at about $35,000, which was well above my budget. Used, it turns out, wasn't as good a deal as I first thought. The 1-year-old bikes were priced almost as high as the new ones and the warranties weren't nearly as good. We spent the better part of 4 hours looking. When I got it down to 2, I decided to sleep on it. We all went out to Donato's for pizza. I was torn. My mind kept drifting between the 2 bikes. Good thing Nadine was driving us around in her Mustang because my mind was back in the Harley dealership. Even at the restaurant, I wasn't fully there. Earth to Steve. Earth to Steve, Nadine called out, trying to get my attention. I'm sorry, it's just that it's a lot of money, and I want to make the right decision. They're both beautiful bikes, and I know you'll be happy with either one. But is that a good enough reason to ignore the 2 best-looking women in the restaurant? That snapped me out of my stupor. I still thought about the bikes, but I now had other things on my mind. Nadine drove us back to the beach house. I could tell she was not ready to leave for her place right away. You want some company tonight? I leaned over, kissed her, and asked her what did she think? I'm not sure. I don't have a fancy paint job, a fairing with a custom radio, or a trunk, but I do have a few things that just might interest you. I opted for Nadine. While Nadine was in the shower, Tina asked me if she was more than just a girlfriend. She was getting used to having Nadine around, especially on weekends. It was getting to be normal for her to wake up on a Saturday or Sunday morning and find Nadine with me. I looked at Tina, dug down in my heart, and tried to find an answer that would explain it to both of us. I care for her a lot, but that's a question I've been asking myself for weeks, and I'm not sure exactly how to answer it. Well, I like her, if that counts for anything. It did, more than she could imagine. I found Nadine in her favorite spot at my house, upstairs on the rooftop deck. I handed her a glass of wine and sat down next to her on the lounger. I love this place. It's quiet, tranquil, and so relaxing. I could spend my entire life up here, Nadine said with a contented sigh. In the distance, hearing the surf breaking on the shore and feeling the stiff sea breeze on my face brought me back to the day Lana and I first saw this place, and how happy we were back then. And with her body ravaged by that god-awful disease, she still wanted to spend every available moment up here. I knew how Lana felt about our rooftop refuge. Now Nadine felt the same way. I didn't make love with Nadine that night. We kissed, talked, and kissed a lot more. I watched her fall asleep, like I had Lana so many times before. My mind was in turmoil. I wasn't trying to replace Lana. Damn it, I was moving on. Then why did I feel like this? It was like I was somehow being unfaithful to her memory. I didn't sleep much that night. My brain wouldn't give me the peace I so desperately needed. In Shades of Tina, when Nadine opened her eyes, I was there, laying next to her, watching her. She wiped the corner of her mouth. Am I drooling or something? I didn't say a word. I just smiled and kissed her. You all right? Never better. You ready to do this? Nadine said over breakfast. I looked over at her and nodded. Yes. I thought to myself, this decision is going to be easy. The next one will be a lot more difficult. After breakfast or should I say we, bought the two-tone blue and gray Ultra. I drove what I thought was a good deal, but when all was said and done, The dealer still made his money, and I got what I wanted. Tina looked at the back seat and was all smiles. I was happy. Later, the three of us went on about a 50-mile ride, and for the first time in a long time, Tina rode on the back of my bike. It felt good to have her back there. When we stopped for a potty break, Nadine came over and looked at the bike. Well, any buyer's remorse? None. It's everything I could have asked for. I was looking at her when I said it, thinking about something entirely different. I had the second longest week of my life. This time no one died, but that didn't make it any easier. Tina kept asking what was wrong, and all I could reply was that I had a lot on my mind, and I did. On Tina's mind was the HOG run we were going on this Saturday. All she could talk about was being on the back of her dad's new bike. She hoped everyone would be green with envy. I took Friday off from work. When Tina left for school, I took 2 yellow roses to the cemetery. It was pretty quiet at that time of the day. The lawn crew was just getting started. Sprinkler heads were popping up. No matter. I was on a mission. We talked like we always had. I had lots to say and she listened, like she had a million times before. I told her I would always love her, and that Tina was becoming the woman we always dreamed she would be. I teared up, but for the first time I didn't cry. We both knew I was moving on. I had heard about a Jewish tradition that fit the moment. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a piece of coral, and placed it on her headstone. It meant I was there and would never forget her. She was my love. She'd been my wife in my life, but no longer. Tina found me on the roof when she got home from school. She wanted to know why I wasn't at work. The only explanation I could give her was I'd had something important I needed to do earlier in the day, and after that I wanted a little time to myself. Dad, are you sure you're okay? I am now. I spent the next 2 months getting to know Nadine. Not the surface one she showed everyone, but the deep down Nadine she never let anyone see. At the same time, we were still doing everything together as a family, including going to both parents' houses for get-togethers. She had an older married brother and a sister who was 3 years younger than her, engaged to a real a-hole, though I'd never tell her that to her face. She had a wonderful mom and dad who were just happy to see their daughter with someone who treated her well and made their formerly sad daughter happy again. Nadine was getting more comfortable around us too. She had given up wearing long pants all the time and had taken to sometimes wearing colorful sundresses and capri pants. Though she was not ready for a bathing suit yet, she even started to wear long shorts. Black became part of the past she could finally let go of. Her period of mourning was over. I was glad to see she felt she could trust us to accept her as she is. Somehow the more we learned about each other, the more beautiful she became in my eyes. It was late November, and the weather had started to get a little cool. You needed a jacket on the morning rides. For the last couple of weeks, Tina had begged off attending any of the HOG rallies. She preferred her friends to the two of us. I knew the novelty had worn off. And Nadine? Well, she was a permanent fixture in our lives now. Lana had been buried with her wedding rings, but my grandmother had given my mother hers before she died. Tommy was already married, and my sister Jenny? Well, she had a rock that you needed 2 hands to lift. So the rings were mine if I wanted them. Thursday night, I stopped over at my parents' house like I'd done 1,000 times before. This time, though, it was different. I had a request. Mom, I'd like to take Grandma's rings with me tonight. Steve, you want to tell me something? Maybe Sunday, but not now. She went to her jewelry box, got them for me, and placed them in my hand. She's a wonderful girl. I know the two of you will be as happy as you and Lana were. I kissed her on the cheek. Friday night, Nadine brought over ribs for dinner. There was a rib joint on her side of town that had the best ribs I had since we moved south. They weren't as good as the place I knew up north, but they were a close second. At the last minute, Tina begged off to go with one of her friends to a movie and for pizza afterwards. Her friend's parents were taking them, and I think there were boys involved, although nothing was said about that. She was just 10 and a half, after all. Just the two of us tonight? She asked with a huge grin on her face. You game for a little spice with your dinner? We ate in the nude sitting on the living room floor. We spread out a sheet, grabbed the food, and even drank from the chilled bottle of wine, no glasses for us. It was like a picnic, only a whole lot nicer. I love this barbecue sauce, I told her, licking my fingers. Oh, you do you? She put a dab on each of her dugs. Let's see if this improves the taste. By the time I'd finished with her nipples, some had dripped onto her navel and down between her legs. This was my idea of a picnic. By the time we were done, we were both a sticky mess. Tongues can only do so much cleaning, so we were off to the shower. Sex in the shower can be done, if done carefully. Tina came home about 9. Nadine and I were sitting on the couch watching TV waiting for her. After a short conversation about her evening, she headed for her room, and we headed for our bed, and it was our bed now. By 11, the Moore household was quiet, except for the pit stop I made at 2 a.m. "Steve, I love you," Nadine said as soon as I opened my eyes the following morning. "I've loved you for a long time, and I think we should get married. If I wasn't awake before, I sure as hell was now." "You're proposing to me?" Now I was the one sitting up, making sure this wasn't some weird dream. "Well, since you're not going to propose to me, I might as well lay my cards on the table. Steve, I want you for my husband. I can't make it any plainer than that. What makes you think I wasn't going to ask you? Maybe I was going to do it this weekend." I shot back. "Steve, if I waited for you to ask me, we'd be collecting Medicare and Social Security. How about if I was, and had the rings and everything?" "Okay, prove it." I jumped out of bed and went over to my dresser, opened up my top drawer and pulled out a small envelope. "I'm sorry there is no ring, box, but it doesn't change the way I feel about you. Nadine, I love you. Please, will you marry me?" I opened her left hand and began to slip on my grandmother's engagement ring on her ring finger. Okay, so it didn't fit, but it was the thought that counted. My grandmother had tiny fingers. The ring would have to be made larger, but the stone was perfect. I guess in shock, she looked at it, smiled, and gave me a huge kiss. "Well, what do you say? Will you let me make an honest man out of you?" "Only if you let me make an honest woman out of you first. That'll be the day." Years later, there was still a disagreement about who asked who first, and I would always remind her that I had the rings. We spent Saturday together just enjoying the moment. We told Tina at breakfast, asking her not to say a word until we had a chance to tell our families. She couldn't understand why we were waiting. "Honey, we need a little quiet time to ourselves before everything gets nuts." We all had breakfast on the roof deck, after which Nadine and I walked the shore for about an hour. We talked in and out of bed, and by midnight we were drained, but extremely happy. The following day we had breakfast at her parents' and lunch with mine. Neither family was surprised, but both were thankful we'd found one another. And then it began. We started planning our late spring wedding. We told both families we wanted a small, intimate wedding, even though it ended up being neither. Jenny and her family came, but I hadn't counted on our entire HOG chapter wanting to escort our limo to the church and then coming to the reception. It ended up being a semi-formal affair with a couple of kegs flowing. The hotel where we held our reception got a lot of business from bikers who couldn't find their bikes, much less ride them home. Nadine looked beautiful. She wore a tea-length off-white dress that clung to her body in all the right places. Her hair was done up in a French braid with flowers running through the braid. Her smile lit up the room. Somehow Nadine and Tina found Tina a mini version of Nadine's dress, without the clinginess. The two of them looked like something out of a fairy tale. Looking at them, my heart overflowed with love and happiness. For our honeymoon, we drove south to Key West. We decided to take Nadine's Mustang instead of our bikes. We didn't want to spend a second of our time out of each other's reach. The car made the most sense, and we rarely unclasped hands the whole ride. We spent the night in Miami before making the final 3-hour trip to Key West. In Key West, we had reserved a room at a small bed and breakfast that wouldn't break the bank. We spent 4 days exploring the Keys during the day and then watching the most spectacular sunsets while sitting on Mallory Dock at night. Nadine surprised me with a few sexy outfits, except she only had any of them on for no more than a minute or two before they joined all the other clothes on the floor. As we like to call it, we talked a hell of a lot during those 4 days in Key West. We put on a ton of miles and had the time of our lives. On the way back, we made a rest stop, and I saw the most gorgeous chopper I'd ever seen. I was memorizing every detail of it with my eyes when the owner came out and saw me looking at it. "You want to buy it? I'll make you a great deal." I looked at my bride. She didn't say a word. Been there, done that. Now I'm riding what I really like next to someone I really love. Getting back into her Mustang, we did the final 2 hours enjoying the beautiful Florida weather, and the feeling you get sitting next to the one you know you belong with. In this down economy, we decided to rent out Nadine's house. We would think about selling it sometime in the future. That woman had a ton of clothes and shoes. We ended up purchasing 2 wardrobes just so she'd have a place for everything. I only hoped this part of her wouldn't rub off on Tina, or I'd have to buy my brother's unit next to mine just so we'd have enough room for clothes. I guess I wasn't as fertile as I thought. I never got Nadine pregnant, though we had a hell of a lot of fun trying. 3 years later, Nadine's sister lost a friend and her husband in a car accident. They had a 3-year-old son, and none of their relatives were in a position to take the boy. We spent a lot of time talking about it between ourselves and with Tina. A few months after learning about Danny, we went through the adoption process and welcomed him into our family. It wasn't easy, and for a while, I thought we had made a big mistake. But like everything else in our lives, we all came around. We could all relate to losing someone we really loved, though that didn't make it any easier for our new son, Danny. At 13, Tina was a big help with Danny. She bonded with him, both understanding what it was like to lose a parent. Eventually, he learned to trust and love us. Luckily, we had 2 bikes, so we could ride 2 up. Vacations were fun and even wet at times, but we were all together. The first time I heard Danny tell Nadine he loved her, I felt complete. It had all been worth it. I'm not saying it was always easy, but we thought we had the best marriage going. I still visit Lana's grave every so often. I bring her up to date, and though it may sound a little strange, I sometimes bring pictures. Do I miss her? I think I always will, but I have a new love in my life, and I know Lana understands. I tell Lana one day in the future I'll introduce her to Nadine, and I know they'll be the best of friends, but for now, I'll just live my life like she would have wanted me to. Though I may have died a little when Lana left me, I'm just glad I met someone who brought me back to life. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.